Hey there, I'm Trevor, and this is going to be a very special video. Every year, my family and I go on a big family vacation, and last year's was truly something special. Because of this, I just knew I had to make a video out of it so that we could relive it over and over again. We had so much fun on this trip, and so I hope that maybe you can experience even just a small portion of that from this video. So let's go to Colorado. Before we begin, I'd like to explain a little bit, and I promise I will try to keep it short. And yes, I do have significantly less hair than normal, and this will be the only time that I choose to acknowledge it. During our time in Colorado, we stayed in Colorado Springs, and that general area is where most of our activities took place. The trip lasted a total of 9 days, but the last 2 days were spent entirely driving back home. So I'll just be focusing on the first 7 days. This trip wasn't your average relaxing beachside resort vacation. No, we pushed our limits and tried something new and more challenging each and every day. So much so that on the 7th day, we faced our biggest trial yet. The Manitou Incline. A mile-long incline comprised of 2,768 steps up a mountain that is known for being very, very difficult. However, we had hope, and an entire week to prepare mentally and physically. Unfortunately, the incline is not the only challenge that we had to face. Sometimes things just don't go to plan, and unexpected problems can occur at any given time. But before we get into any of that, we just need to start at the beginning. Oh, hey there. We started the day early as we got up, got ready, and packed the car, and then we headed out. We went through Missouri and into Kansas, but we actually didn't get to Colorado. We drove about 8 hours on this first day. Well, my dad did, while me and my siblings either slept, messed around, or fought the entire time. 8 hours is a long time to be stuck in a car with your family, but we still had a long road ahead of us. Our destination for today was a hotel in Salina, Kansas, which is where we spent our first night. The hotel was super nice, especially for just a quick stop in some random city. But I didn't get much footage of the place, so you're just gonna have to trust me on that. With most of the driving out of the way and a nice bed to sleep in, we all drifted off to sleep and prepared for we drove all day again. I'm just kidding. We drove for most of the day, but only for about 6 hours this time. After a while, we made it to Colorado Springs, where we checked into our rental house.
I haven't officially assigned rooms yet, so let's just look.
And then we went out to get pizza. The view was insane, and we got to see this every day while we were there. After eating, we didn't really do much besides preparing and getting settled in. We also needed a good amount of sleep that night, because now that we've made it to our destination, things were about to pick up on Day 3 must have started off really fast because I didn't record at all until we had reached our first destination for the day, the Pain Mines. When we arrived, we were all alone in the middle of nowhere. There were no mines anywhere. It was just miles and miles of open fields and wind turbines. There was, however, a path. Along the way, there were a lot of these weird-looking anthills made of rocks, as well as some scary-looking cacti. But eventually, we made it to the actual paint mines. We're all done now. We're gonna head back to the car. I'm not actually that tired. I think we're gonna be okay. I don't want to say too much, but despite the name, the mines are actually more like a maze, winding through eroded rocks. It also got pretty tight in some areas, and there were quite a few other people there as well, which led to some pretty funny interactions with other tourists. As you can see, it's mostly just white rocks, but there are also areas with quite a few colors mixed in as well. Since it was just our first event, I don't want to be too harsh, but it was really hot and sunny that day, and the bright rocks were just beaming the light right into our eyes. But despite that, it was a lot of fun to walk through with my family, so I'm gonna give the paint mines a 7 out of 10. After that, we were all hot, stinky, tired, etc. Plus, the rest of our events for the day were in town, so we decided to go back to the house to freshen up. Once we got into town, we headed to this place. This was a little museum showing off some old Western stuff. I'm not gonna lie, this isn't really my thing, but it was a neat little attraction. And of course, half of the building was just a gift shop, which is actually where I got this sweatshirt. Oh, but we weren't done with museums just yet. My mom loves miniatures. I feel like that's a very mom thing to like. Anyway, there was this little museum that was showing off these little sets and scenes. They even gave us a little scavenger hunt, which reminded me of those I Spy books that I used to love as a kid. And they gave us candy. I was enjoying my time in Colorado so far. However, I was starting to notice something that just couldn't be ignored. My allergies. We were on our way to the Manitou Cliff Dwellings. However, I was ready to be home at this point. Now I know that sounds extreme, but I typically have really bad allergies, and something in Colorado was really triggering them.
Need electrical lighting back there?
But our day was not over just yet, so I just had to suffer through for a little while longer. Oh, and the cliff dwellings were also pretty cool. Once again, there just isn't much to say about them, and I didn't record too much either. But it was cool to see the little rooms and houses. At this point, it was just about dinner time, so we headed down to Manitou Springs. We ate at a relatively meh restaurant and looked around the city a bit, including some shopping. Yay. On top of that, we also decided to go visit the Manitou Incline just to get an idea of what we were about to face. However, we couldn't really go very far with our car, so we didn't see very much. I didn't really record at all during this part of the trip, unfortunately, as my hands were full of tissues and I just didn't feel up to it. I did, however, manage to get a few shots of the last event for the day, the Penny Arcade. My favorite moment was when my dad was trying super hard to beat the high score on Galaga, just to find out that they reset the scores regularly. Overall, it was a very good way to end a very long day. We headed back to the house to end the night, and as the day ended, a new day began. And that day was Happy Independence Day! Well, I don't know when you're watching this, but Day 4 took place on the 4th of July, 2023. And if you're confused as to why I'm in the bathtub, just stick around and you'll find out. Anyway, after riding the car for 14 hours just to get to Colorado, I was pretty sick of car rides. But that didn't matter because on day 4, we had to drive another hour and a half through the mountains. Our destination? The paint mines. Wait, haven't we already done that one? Oh, right. The gold mines. After the car ride, we were all pretty tired, but once I saw the elevator that was taking us down, I was about ready to back out. I'm just kidding, that wasn't the elevator, but the real one wasn't much better. Because of our nerves, we all had to use the bathrooms, some of us a little longer than others, but then we descended. Inside of the mine shaft was pretty much what you'd expect. We wore these funky little hard hats, and we were once again in tight spaces with a bunch of random people, which, as always, is fun. Plus, they gave out rocks at the end, and I just so happened to get gold in mine because I'm awesome. The Molly Kathleen Gold Mines gets a 9 out of 10 from me. That might be a bit controversial, but I had a lot of fun. As we were making the long drive back through the mountains, something unexpected happened. It began to rain.
As I mentioned in the intro, there were a few things in this trip that just went wrong. Things that we couldn't have planned for. One of these was my allergies, which never appeared again after the 3rd day. But the rain wasn't any better. It rained multiple days of the trip, despite all the forecasts being clear up until this point. In fact, Colorado is the 6th sunniest state in the US, with around 300 sunny days in a year. And we just so happened to plan our trip on the rainiest week Colorado has ever seen. But we didn't let that stop us, even if some might say it ruined the trip.
Next up was the most intense activity we had done so far. Finding the directions to our hiking trail. After the rain had cleared up, we headed out to a hiking area called the North Cheyenne Canyon Park, which had a bunch of trails to hike on. So much so that we really struggled to find the right place to go. While our dad found the right trail, the rest of us found this little quaint area with a creek. But eventually, we found out the right place to go, and I am so glad that we did. The trail we went on was called the 7 Bridges Trail, and I cannot endorse it enough. I can try all I want to explain it, but I could never do it justice, so you just need to see this for yourself.
Well, we made it to the top. Now we're heading back down. But we made it. We survived. And now we're heading back.
Since it was such an iconic part of our trip, I think this trail gets a 9 out of 10. Not perfect, but pretty close to it. And although it was kind of a chore to climb all the way back down, it won't be the last or the worst time we'll have to do this. We only had one more thing to do on day 4, and that was to watch fireworks as a family. Unfortunately, that didn't go as expected. We had thought that there would be this big show in this park, but we only ever saw a few spread out in the distance. Sadly, this lame excuse for a fireworks show only gets a 2 out of 10. It was a disappointing way to end the day, and to celebrate 4th of July. But as a whole, it was a great day spent with a great family. You know the drill by now. We got up early and we left the house. We had booked a Segway tour of the Garden of the Gods in Colorado. None of us have ever ridden a Segway before, so we had to learn a bit, but it went surprisingly well. Now, we didn't need to book the Segways in order to tour the Garden of the Gods, but I am so glad that we did. The place was beautiful on its own, but the Segways added an extra element that made everything so much more fun. This was such a nice and relaxing way to start the day, just cruising around as a family on our Segways. Our tour guide was just so chill, and we were the only family on the tour, so it felt very personalized. We even got these little lizard on Segway patches that have been on my backpack ever since, and I absolutely love it. Although the hiking from the day before was the highlight of the trip up to this point, I have to say the Garden of the Gods trumps it with a spectacular 10 out of 10. At the time, the family also agreed that this was the best part of the trip so far. Next up was the Cave of the Winds Mountain Park. It was a chill little area with some attractions that I didn't go on, but my brother and sister did. They rated it an 8 out of 10, and so I'll just go along with that. We were also planning to visit Pikes Peak this afternoon. It easily would have been a highlight of the trip, and we were all looking forward to it, especially the donuts at the top. However, the weather just wasn't looking good, similar to the day before, with clouds covering all the mountains in the area. So unfortunately, we weren't able to go to Pikes Peak as we had originally planned to. Pretty much every night of this trip ends about the same, with us heading back to the house and going right to bed. But I just want to take the time to say that the place that we stayed at was really nice. If I had to rate the house, I would probably give it a 9 out of 10. Sadly, I don't have any good videos of it, but I really enjoyed it for what it was, despite not spending much time in it. So overall, it was a relatively short day, but we went to bed early and rested up, because we had a lot to do on. This was a busy day, so our chances of seeing Pikes Peak were pretty small, but we start off the day with a train ride through Royal Gorge. This was my first time ever riding on a train, but it was a lot of fun. We spent a bit of time in our seats, but most of the time was spent out in the open air cars, which is where everyone was. But I can't blame them because the views were incredible. These were some of the best views that we had on our entire trip. We also passed under this huge bridge that we'll come back to later. The train went through the valley for a little while, but once it got to the end of the tracks, it went all the way back through the mountains. And it follows this river all the way through, which had a bunch of rafters. After the train ride, we ate at a sketchy IHOP in the sketchy town nearby, and then we were off to our next destination. Remember that bridge from earlier? Royal Gorge Bridge Park. After seeing it from below, we just had to check it out from above. The bridge was really scary at first, because it felt so insecure with these wooden beams and large gaps in between them. And it was so long, but there really wasn't much to do on the other side.
Seth. Cute.
Honestly, it probably wasn't worth the like $40 fee just to walk across a bridge, but there was this one funny bird show that we watched because we felt like we had to get our money's worth. It was alright, so I'll give it a very generous 7 out of 10.
Okay, so I don't know what I was thinking here. This place is quite literally the definition of a tourist trap, so I'm just gonna... Yeah, that's more like it.
Then on the way to our next adventure, we stopped at this short little drive that went up this small mountain, and I enjoyed climbing up to see how high I could get. My mother did not. It wasn't a huge event, but it was a cool stop. 7 out of 10. To finish up day 6, we went hiking again on a new area and a new trail. This one was much different than the North Cheyenne Canyon Park. It was more open, similar to the paint mines from day 3. This was the Temple Canyon Park Redemption Trail. This trail was a lot of fun to go on, though there were a lot of weird sounding bugs, as well as a lot of poop that I really hope was horse poop, but we were all alone this time, so it really felt like we were out in the wild on our own, despite the fact that we were sticking to a path most of the time. Toward the end of the trail, there was this huge secret area that we had heard about that we just had to check out. It was much tougher to get to, and we all struggled at certain points, but it was definitely worth it.
All right, now get down. No, I'm gonna video you stuck up there. Both of you.
This trail gets another 9 out of 10, so the same as the trail from day 4. Despite their differences, they were both amazing and integral parts of this trip, at least to me. Well, that's all for day 6. We need a lot of rest and preparation for the following day and for the Manitou Incline. On top of that, I had already acquired the worst sunburn of my life, despite using multiple layers of sunscreen the entire trip. But oh well, we had a mountain to climb, because tomorrow was... I said... Alright, this is it. The final day and the final challenge. We only had 2 simple goals on this day: survive Manitou Incline and then celebrate. We had booked a dinner reservation at the Melting Pot, which I had been looking forward to the entire trip. But before we could even consider the future, we had to deal with the task in front of us: the Manitou Incline.
Okay, so now we're on our way to the Manitou Incline.
What you're seeing here is only step 1 of 2,768. This was a monumental challenge for us, but we had been preparing and building up to this all week. Even if some of us wanted to back out now, there was nowhere to go but up.
You're right in my way.
Along the way, we made some friends, both human and chipmunk. So many chipmunks. We even decided to give them all individual names, and here they are now.
We're about halfway right now. What you can see up there is not the top. Past that is about 300 more steps, but we're halfway now, so it's going pretty good. We're not doing too bad. Right, guys?
We had done it. We made it to the top. But our moment of triumph did not last very long, as we had to go all the way back down on a separate trail, and we had no idea what was coming. It started off slow and steady, and the scenery was absolutely beautiful. We knew that this wasn't going to be an easy path back down, but soon we realized that we would be spending the next few hours walking down this rough trail. To make things worse, about halfway down, it began to not just rain, but hail on us. We were so exhausted at this point that we were eager to be done. It genuinely felt like we had been walking all day, despite it being only a few hours. Overall, it was a great challenge, and if it weren't for the path back down, it probably would have been a 10 out of 10. But with all things considered, it gets an 8 out of 10. With the final challenge done and out of the way, and one of our 2 goals finished for the day, we only had one thing on our minds: food. We spent that afternoon resting and freshening up, and then that evening we had our reservation at the Melting Pot. The food was so good. If you haven't had the chance to go there, you need to try it. It was really expensive, and the appetizers weren't that great in my opinion, but the main course and the dessert were phenomenal. You might have already figured it out, but the Melting Pot gets a 10 out of 10. And that about wraps things up. As with many aspects of the trip, we spent the next 2 days heading back to where we started, home. And that's where the Colorado trip reaches its conclusion. Alright, thank you so much for watching this video and for joining me and my family on our trip to Colorado. As I said in the intro, I hope that you felt like you were right there alongside us. So to end this video off, I want to say thank you so much to my family for making this whole trip happen and for including me on it, as well as God for allowing this all to happen and for keeping us safe along the way. And lastly, I once again want to thank you so much for watching. So that being said, I hope that I will see you in the future.